I am a Jedi, like my father before me.
Silly Jedi! Silly Jedi!
Remember, the Force will be with you, always.
You must unlearn what you have learned.
Hey guys, welcome to Jedi Toy Masters Star Wars Card Talk. This is the part 2 of our talk regarding the Colin Trevorrow episode 9 script. If you heard that last episode, I don't know if it was last week or the week before, but I don't know when this will go out. But if you heard that episode, you're going to want to hear this one because we're going to keep going. We're just going to keep going. We're just going to punch it Chewie and we're going to hyperdrive jump or hyper leap jump, whatever Poe did in that movie, and we're just gonna keep going right through it and see what happens.
Let's do it.
So we had some extra thoughts. You had some extra thoughts, and I felt too, like, you know, there was a couple things that we probably could have mentioned, some likes and dislikes regarding the Trevorrow script. I've since our last talk, I actually listened to a couple of other opinions on the interwebs regarding it, and I get it. Like, you know, we didn't read the script. We've listened to kind of like and read descriptions of the story in detail, but I guess ultimately, you know, if that script would have made it to movie, it wouldn't have been that script the way it was written. There would have probably been a lot of tweaks, a lot of compromises. You know, like somebody said, movies are made 3 times. You know, you write it, you shoot it, and then you edit it. So, right. So it could have been a lot of changes, but ultimately, I still think that the bones of what this Colin Trevorrow script is all about, I really like over Rise of Skywalker.
I'm gonna agree and disagree with you at the same time.
That's it. We're getting right into it.
And we'll talk about like the themes. So I do agree with you on a lot of the characters' arcs, and even to some degree Rey's. Except there's one fundamental problem with Trevorrow. I still don't know how to pronounce his name. But there's one fundamental problem with his kind of view on the Force. I'm just going to go out and say it right now. The whole, like, Rey Jedi idea, the balance, I think he has a misunderstanding of that. But I do like the other aspects of it because of how he really followed through on a lot of the themes that were established in episode 7 and 8.
Okay. Yeah, no, I get that. And I mean, again, I think that's probably would have been one of the things where Disney and maybe the Lucas Story Group would have kind of like gotten involved and kind of gone back and forth to find a compromise, a medium of how to really tackle the whole idea of Rey and the Force and the balance. And I mean, I do like the idea that she is able to kind of like balance the light and the dark within herself, so that this, like, you know, darkness rises and light to meet it idea would kind of like could be in one person. Like, you can have a balance of the light and the dark, but ultimately be good and be, you know, one with the Force, I guess. You know, kind of like what are those guys from Rogue One? You know, the Force is with me and I'm with the Force.
The keepers of the temple, the kyber crystals.
Yeah,
the Guardians.
The Guardians.
So the name exactly.
Like, I think that I like the idea of Rey being able to find that balance. The one thing that probably doesn't really get explained, aside from the Force chose you, is why Rey right off the bat was like so powerful and so tapped into the Force. Like, once she acknowledged it, that the Force was something in her, it's almost like all those abilities just kind of like rose to the surface in the first 2 movies. And, you know, the idea that she's a nobody sounds great on paper, because it really kind of shows that moving forward we can have Jedi or people that are force sensitive that can achieve the things that the Jedi's achieved. Case in point, even like in Star Wars Rebels, that animated show, you know, you meet this kid Ezra, and like, you know, he's a nobody. His parents were kind of involved in politics, but he's basically a nobody. And during the course of the show, he's force sensitive, and he's like one of the kids, the children of the Force, and like that's kind of like something that like Vader and the Inquisitors were like hunting down during that period. Any kid that like showed any promise of being force sensitive. So I get it. There are force sensitive people, but like to the degree of Rey, it would have been nice to have some kind of explanation for that in either script, JJ's or, because I don't really buy the whole, oh, well, she's related to Palpatine, so that's why she's so powerful. Like, yeah, but we don't even know why Palpatine is powerful to begin with. Like, for all we know, he could have just been a regular dude that started messing with the Sith stuff, and like, you know, he could have just been a force sensitive person that went to the dark side. You know, like, why is he like the equilibrium of the dark side? And, you know, it's that, you know, that's really something that really hasn't been explained, and it'll probably get explained in like books and comics. But to me, it's like, well, yeah, I would love for it to be explained in a movie for once.
Yeah, I mean, but we accepted it in the original trilogy and the prequels. We accepted that he was powerful, right? So, I mean, I think you're right. I would have liked a little bit more understanding of how she was initially so powerful with the Force, even though she had no training. But at the same time, like, you know, I can accept that maybe something within like bloodlines, like family bloodline, like there's something unique about that would maybe make you more powerful. I can accept that. I think in the Rise of Skywalker, I would have preferred that, like, okay, so we got hints that Finn was force sensitive, right? I wish that they would have played with that idea a little bit more.
Yeah.
And instead of just hinting at it, like, show us, you know, like show us moments where there's maybe leaks in that ability. You know, it's not refined. He's not super strong with it. You know, we got in the right time, we got where he felt that Rey was in trouble or things like that. But I would have loved more of an arc for Finn, where we saw, I didn't have to see everything, but see more of where this is going.
Yeah. 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 In the Rise of Skywalker, like I definitely think that they should have taken a little bit more chances with that, and it would have been great. Like even like when he was, you know, trying to destroy that Star Destroyer with Janna, if at some point like he is able, because of the stressful situation that they're in, he is able to kind of like tap into the Force and show a little bit, kind of like Broom Boy, like show that he can use the Force a little bit, and maybe it surprises him and it surprises Janna, and that kind of shows that, you know what, that would kind of set up the idea that it's not just Rey, she isn't the last Jedi. Like there is promise for the future of the Force and of these Force sensitive people that are going to be fighting for good, for truth and justice in the galaxy or whatever. Like they really didn't do that, and I think Trevorrow's script does hint at it a lot more, because there is a mention somewhere in there where they're in the battle, in the midst of the battle, and Rey kind of like communicates to Finn via the Force, and Finn kind of like communicates back, and that kind of like is almost like that hint that we got in Empire, where Luke and Leia kind of like sensed each other in the Force, and then in the next movie it was explained that they were related, and that explained it. But yeah, like I definitely like the bones of the Trevorrow script. I like the fact that we go to Coruscant. I like the fact that there's a lot more, like it connects the prequels a lot more. It because I think that's definitely something that the sequel trilogy has tried to like steer clear of. It is that with like almost avoiding any talk or mention of the prequels, and if they do mention the prequels, it's like a throwaway line, almost like dismissive of the prequels. Oh yeah, clones or whatever. Oh yeah, the Jedi at the top of their power, they were what, you know, they were whack or whatever. Like they didn't really like tap into the entire history. And JJ was all big about, well, this movie is supposed to it culminates all like 9 movies or whatever. And it, aside from Palpatine being a character that was in the prequels, like it doesn't, nothing that he did in this movie really was set up in the prequels, except maybe the line of the dark side as a pathway to many abilities some consider to be unnatural, and like and that kind of like explains why he's back from the dead. You know, that maybe but aside from that, like that, the Rise of Skywalker doesn't really, you know, it doesn't really kind of like acknowledge the history of the prequels, especially since like the era of the Clone Wars has become such a rich era. I mean, we have like 6 seasons of show and animated history showing like all this stuff that happened during the, you know, Clone Wars. I mean, The Mandalorian is basically based on stuff that happened during the Clone War with the Mandalorians and like the aftermath of that. Like there's all this mention of it. There's all this history that wasn't really utilized in The Last Jedi. It was just basically good, evil, retreading Return of the Jedi, and boom, the end.
Well, Duel of the Fates also retread Jedi. It's just how you do it. So JJ and Chris Terrio, any like connections to their prequels were what I call them just flourishes. They were just surface level stuff, not deep.
Yeah.
Like to bring back the Force Ghost, right, at the very end. Yeah, that's kind of cool, but Rey had no connection with them. We had no sense of there being any connection with them. If there's any connection, it's just simply for the audience.
Right.
But it's not for the character herself. So let's go back to the Duel of the Fates drafts, right? One thing that didn't sit right with me was the whole like Grey Jedi idea. Now, they didn't say Grey Jedi, I don't think, in the script. And I realized, I heard another commentary about it. I realized that there's actually 2 drafts that are out there.
Huh.
But in both drafts, Rey, like how she beats Kylo Ren in the end is embracing the rage in her, right? And I guess that's how he describes like balancing the light and the dark. And I think that's a fundamental misunderstanding of what it is to balance, right? Because that wasn't George Lucas's idea of what balance is. George always talked about how like letting fear and anger control you, that was the problem, right? And so it doesn't make sense. And then from like a Christian perspective, even though they're not like Christians, whatever, but like the idea of like evil, like balancing good and evil, that doesn't make sense. That's not a balance. Evil's always going to want to control and ruin and destroy, right? So like you can't have half poison and then half clean water in your cup.
Right.
That's not balance.
Yeah.
That's just poison. You know what I mean? And so that's a fundamental, like, that's what I don't agree at all with the Duel of the Fates script, if that's what it's saying. You know, of course, again, we're hearing secondhand. None of us have read the script. And so, you know, but if that's what it's saying, that really doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
And like, I one thing that I would say, like, I like what Luke was saying in The Last Jedi about, like, the Jedi, they went too far with their rules, right? Like, rules that's good, like, they have good ideas, but to have no attachment, no love, supposedly, right? That might have been an error on their part.
Right.
It's when those things control you in a bad way. So
Right.
It's when you don't make the right decision because of your attachments, you know? And so I think the balance would be, you know what? Like, I can have attachments, I can love, but even with that, I'm gonna make the right decisions. That would be balance in oneself, not like a gray where you have like darkness and light at the same time. We all have darkness. It's about like being able to embrace the light and shut away the darkness. Mm-hmm. That's balance.
That's good. That's good, man. I mean, that I totally agree. That actually, you convinced me. That actually that makes more sense. And But you know what's funny is even in the Rise of Skywalker, the fact that her lightsaber at the end is yellow, it kind of hints at that that idea that she's been able to that, you know, she's seen the light, she's seen the dark, and she has kind of like found balance. They don't really go on, they don't really say what it is, but I think the fact that her lightsaber is that like this yellow color, that kind of does like signify almost like I'm not red, I'm not green, I'm not blue, I'm kind of like somewhere, I'm different. You know, it's like a new beginning. So there is that idea of her achieving something that the Jedi didn't achieve, or maybe few achieved, but it wasn't mainstream because of the Jedi culture or whatever during that time. Like, because guys like Qui-Gon, and some others, they kind of were on the fence. They were like, I'm a Jedi and I'm all about this life, but we're taking it a little bit too far. Like he and you got hints of it in the Phantom Menace.
Yeah.
But
I think when people say gray Jedi, I don't know if that comes from legends or whatnot, but I think that people don't have to understand. Like when Qui-Gon wasn't embracing like anger, fear to where it controls his, like he's gonna make bad choices. That's not what he was trying to do. I think he was just not so bound with the strict Jedi code.
Yeah, I mean, a perfect example of that.
It's like legalism.
Yeah. I mean, you see it perfectly in the Phantom Menace when he's battling Darth Maul, because after such an intense battle, during that lightsaber battle, like there's a moment where like that force field wall like divides them, and whereas Darth Maul is like, he keeps that momentum of anger and hate, and he's like pacing back and forth. Qui-Gon takes that moment to kind of like compose himself, and he kneels down and he kind of like meditates and kind of like tries to center himself, because he doesn't want to be controlled by that anger. And that's like a perfect example of him. He was like in the midst of the battle, he got heated, and then all of a sudden he has this opportunity. Let me ground myself again. Let me center myself again. And
because they embrace the Force for defense, never attack.
Yeah.
Right? It's always about letting go. I mean, from the 1977 Star Wars, like, use the Force, Luke. Like, and he turned off his targeting computer.
Yeah.
Because he allowed, like, to center himself. And then like your example of Qui-Gon, right? So these are examples of being at peace with yourself, and you can feel anger and rage and all these things, right? But not letting it cloud your mind and control your actions.
Yeah.
So that's why I feel like fundamentally, like the Duel of the Fates, if that's what it's about, then that's messed up. That's wrong. Like the other stuff, like about Finn and like and how and some of the like little things like Kylo having a vision, fighting Darth Vader. I mean, that would have been so cool. I thought, and a lot of other aspects. Even Rey being no one. I could have gone either way. Rey being someone or no one. No one's no one. But you know what I mean? Not from like some prestigious line.
Right.
It's all about how you do it. So all those things from that draft are cool, except for that fundamental idea of what the Force is.
Yeah, I could agree with that. I think ultimately, though, I think that like the bones of this story, I prefer over Rise of Skywalker. Like, in the Rise of Skywalker, that whole that they have to go find the map, and they got to find the dagger, and then the dagger leads them to this and the Death Star, and that, like, I just feel like that whole adventure was just made up just to give them something to do. Whereas I feel like in the Trevorrow script, the idea of like, no, the battle is gonna take place on Coruscant, and we're gonna like steal this Star Destroyer and use like this, these weapons against them, and then Finn kind of recruiting people, and like, I like the idea that the battle takes place on the ground of Coruscant and in the skies above, in the space above Coruscant, like very reminiscent of Jedi, but instead of like the space and the forest, we're like fighting in the urban, in the city, and in space. Like, I like that idea. I like that we come back to where the corruption started, Coruscant, to end the thing like that. That's really like, when I heard that, man, I was like, man, like that's like almost like a no-brainer. And the fact that you go to Mortis, you go to like the Sith Mecca, you know, in that story, and instead of some made-up planet that we've never heard of, that now we're supposed to believe is some ancient, you know, Sith world, but we've, you know, I mean, the casual Star Wars fan isn't going to care. They're going to be like, all right, this is a cool new place that existed that we never heard of. But like the hardcore Star Wars fan is going to be like, I've read all the books, I've read all the comics, like I watched the Clone Wars. Where this planet's never been mentioned. This place has never been mentioned. Palpatine never talks about this place. None of the Sith ever mentioned this place, or this whole idea of like being revived and coming back and being part of a claw machine, and you know, like all that stuff. I feel like was just made up to kind of. It was like almost like the desperate hour. It was like, help me, JJ, you're my only hope. Like you gotta like we gotta wrap this up some way. And he kind of like him and I forgot his name, the Chris Terrio, you know, they kind of like just took a bunch of different ideas, threw them on the wall, and whatever stuck, they kind of molded it together.
I would give them a little more credit than that. I mean, it's a hard task. It was a hard task for them, not having Carrie Fisher and trying to figure out what to do until, you know, honor her and the character of Leia, you know. I don't know. I feel a little more.
You're a little more forgiving than I am.
Hey, well, I'm here, man. This is a good car talk.
Yeah. Well,
this is like therapy right here.
This is that. Well, that's what this is. Star Wars car talk. It's therapy for me, and you know, when I get to have somebody on here, it's therapy for us. You know, so that's why I want to keep this going. But so we just wanted to give a couple more ideas of what we thought of the Colin Trevorrow script. Let us know in the comments below what you think. Make sure you like and subscribe. And man, if anyone out there has a copy of this thing, I'm not going to say to like out yourself and say, well, I got it from so-and-so or whatever, but man, send it our way, because I'd love to read this thing. I really would love to read this thing. And I just really hope that that maybe Disney will somehow take the ideas of that script and maybe make some kind of like Elseworld comic based on it, you know? Because I'm sure there's also, you know, there's different versions of The Force Awakens that were written. There's different versions of like The Last Jedi that probably were kind of tweaked. So it would be cool to kind of see like, you know, I have a Star Wars Elseworld. It's called Infinity, Star Wars Infinities book. And it's a New Hope, Empire, and Jedi. But it's like certain story elements are changed, and to see what would happen. You know, like what if Luke Skywalker missed and he didn't blow up the Death Star in A New Hope? You know, what if Princess Leia turned to the dark side and Vader approached her in Empire instead of Luke? Like things like that. Like, and I haven't been able to finish all the way through, but the last time I was reading through it years ago, I just remember thinking like, this is really cool. Like to be able to play fun, you know, have fun with your imagination and see where these Elseworld stories take you. I think they could totally do that with this sequel trilogy, and kind of like use a lot of these story elements that were abandoned and kind of incorporate them into like a comic. I think that would be fun.
Any more Star Wars content, I'm not opposed to.
That's right. The trailer for Clone Wars Season 6 dropped, the new one. I encourage you to check that out. And if you haven't done so already, I'm like in Season 4 at this point. I think I'm beginning Season 4 right now on Disney Plus, and I'm just trying to breeze through these episodes of Clone Wars, trying to absorb it, so to be ready for this last season of Clone Wars that's coming out next month. So
I don't know if I could catch up, man. I might do what the unthinkable. I might do what the unthinkable and just watch Season 6.
Oh no, no! You gotta like you gotta pull an all-nighter and just like literally just binge watch like 2 seasons. Just do it.
This is too much. I can't take it.
Just do it. Do it.
Power is too much.
Do it. Do it.
Oh man.
All right, man. Well, thanks.
What we need to do. Someone needs hold on. Someone needs to put like these are the pivotal episodes for each season. For the person who just have kids, have work, does not have the time.
Yeah,
the pivotal ones, the ones you have to watch.
It's
Someone
true.
needs to have that
it's
one.
true because there's a lot of throwaway episodes in there. There's a lot of like just like villain of the week type episodes in there that don't really connect. But there are a couple of like little mini stories that take place within a couple of episodes that are really good stories to watch. Like those episodes as a block. These episodes of like I'm pretty sure it's probably out there. If I find it, I'll send it your way. And if I do find it, I'll put it in the description below. But thanks, bro. Thanks for talking to me here. Star Wars Card Talk.
Peace.
Kevin Trevorrow script. I give it a thumbs up, even though there are some things that don't work. I still give it a thumbs up. Oh. All right. Until next time.
You know what? One last word. I think that if we got this movie, we'd be like, where's the JJ script?
Oh no! I know. We're horrible. That's the problem. Yeah, we're never sad. Star Wars fans are like the most unsatisfied humans ever.
It's terrible.
Yeah.
Listen, man. May the force be with you.
May the force be with you, my friend.